No promotions and spam, please. As always, please respect everyone's privacy, especially tonight dealing with journal prompts. Things might get a little deep, a little vulnerable, so we always want to respect people's privacy because we need a safe space to be able to share, which also leads us to no hate speech or bullying. Try to limit the repetitive product and accessory questions. We don't mind a little bit of chatter around that, but again, this is always the fastest hour in the universe, so we want to stick to the topic at hand if possible. And then Malika is here with me tonight, the wonderful Malika. So she'll be helping out in the chat with questions and things, but there are some things that we cannot help with. So if that happens, we'll direct you over to the care team over at hello@silkandsonder.com so that they can look into that for you. And finally, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. Again, we are going to be doing journaling prompts tonight. So if you run into a prompt and it brings up some crunchy feelings that you are not ready to deal with, take a breath, listen to the music, hang out in the chat, come back when you're ready, right? You can skip that one. You don't have to do it right now, right this minute. We want you to use this time for you and take whatever you need from this time. So if you engage with something that you are ready to engage with and it unlocks things, we are here for that. If you start to engage with something and you're like, oop, nope, I'm not ready for that, we're here for that too. Just take care of yourself as we move through. Our agenda is we're going to do an opening activity. It's also a journaling prompt. And then we're going to do 2 journal prompts that are in the journal, and then we'll close out with something a little bit more fun, which is our trust jar. And speaking of trust, that is our new theme for the month. And I am so excited to talk to you guys about this theme because all of our themes are amazing, but every now and then we get one that is super personal to me, and this is one of them. So I'm really excited to just sort of share my perspective here with this theme with you all. So a few years ago, I was in therapy. I'm still in therapy. I probably will always be in therapy because it's just part of my self-care. And I was talking to my therapist about how I had trust issues. And she was like, yes, you do. Yes, you definitely do have trust issues. And she started asking me, like, when do you think that started and all of that, right? And I was like, I don't know, because honestly, as long as I can remember, I remember being this way. But it was starting to really interfere in my life in some big ways where I was being really resistant to people and like closing myself off to like very safe, very established relationships and people who had proven, right, that they were trustworthy and they were in my corner. But I was like very closed off to them and very like quick to feel suspicious or quick to feel like on the defense if there was one little thing or one little setback or one little mistake that anybody made. I was very like quick. I used to cut people out of my life very quickly as well. And it all sort of stemmed from these trust issues, right? And so my therapist was like, well, you know, a lot of the times when we talk about things like this, you kind of have to start with yourself first. So what does that bring up for you? And one of the primary things that I'm in therapy for is my anxiety. I have generalized anxiety, and my therapist and I talk a lot about a disconnect between my mind, which is very logical and able to figure out all the things and solve all the world's problems, and my body, which is just not quite in the same place. And how do we connect the two? And what do we do? And all of this stuff, right? And at the time, I was like, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to do the thing. But I was like, okay, I'll start with myself. Okay. And she was like, why don't you just think about that? Take some time, whatever. We'll see each other in a couple weeks. Well, I'm an Enneagram 5, which means I lean heavily into that logic. I like to research things. And so I immediately started looking into, well, what exactly is trust? Like, we all kind of know how that makes us feel when we use that word trust, right? Like it invokes a feeling in you. Even if you don't have all the words to describe it, you know what that means to you. But how do you break it down to a point where you can figure out what the hangup is or why you feel this way or what is causing this like malfunction, right? So I did what I always do and I started Googling and searching and looking for all the things. And I found this awesome podcast with Brene Brown called Unlocking Us. And she had a recording of herself talking about trust at an event. And I listened to it, and it unlocked so many things for me. And so I'm going to share that with you today. Now, this is just one person's perspective, right? This is just hers. This is her breakdown. So if this doesn't connect with you, leave it, right? If trust feels very different for you, if this doesn't help you in some way, stick with what works for you. But I wanted to share it with all of you because it definitely helped me. So the way that she broke down trust was this 7 elements of trust acronym that she came up with called braving. So braving, right? B is for boundaries. You respect boundaries. And when you're not sure what's okay, you ask. She also talks about you hold boundaries, right? You respect others' boundaries, but you also set boundaries and hold them yourself. Reliability is you do what you'll say you'll do. I'm going to get up and walk every day. Do you get up and walk every day? I'm going to call you on Friday. I'm going to. Do you call the person on Friday, or is it just somebody you ran into the supermarket and then Friday comes around and you're exhausted and you just totally forgot about it, right? Accountability is you own your mistakes and apologize. So when you forget to call the person on Friday, do you tell them on Saturday, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to call you. Do you have time this weekend? Or do you just let it go? Also, accountability with yourself, right? When you don't get up and walk every day, do you say, you know what? That's okay. It rained 3 days of the week this week, but instead I did this other thing. Or do you just continuously go, it's fine. It's fine. You know what? It was okay. It's fine, right? The vault. You never share experiences that aren't yours to share, right? Somebody shares something with you, you keep it sacred. Even with your closest people, you keep things sacred. Obviously, there are some things that if it is a collective experience, you share with one another and you kind of keep that circle of trust. Kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about this needs to be a safe space, right? We need to respect each other's privacy. So like what stays in Sonder Club here in our Sonder Social, it has to stay here with us because this is this collective experience, collective circle of trust that we have. Integrity, so you practice your values rather than simply professing them. I have a good friend that this is a weakness of hers. She says a lot of things. She's very passionate about the things, but then her actions don't line up with the things that she says. And it causes some trust issues between us, right? I can very clearly identify that that is sort of my hiccup with her now because of this acronym. Before, it just felt like things feel really unpredictable with that person and I don't understand why. And now I can say, oh, well, it's actually her integrity. Like she says one thing, but she does another. And that's really confusing for me. And it causes this trust issue, right? Non-judgment. We can ask for what we need and talk about how we feel without judgment. Hey, I know you really want to go to that event and you really wanted me to come, but I'm super tired and I just don't have the energy. You can say that to that person and you know that they're not going to be like, oh, well, yeah, okay, I get it. They're going to be like, that is totally fine. I want you to stay healthy. I want you to do what's right for you. We will meet up another time, right? Generosity. Extend generous interpretation to the words and actions of others. This means when you trust somebody and they trust you, when something doesn't align with these other things, you don't automatically assume that it was intentional. And this was one of the things that I really struggled with before I started digging into this, is if somebody wasn't, feeling like they felt like a disingenuous person to me. Their actions weren't aligning up with their words, right? Or they weren't respecting my boundaries, or they weren't reliable. I immediately assumed it was purposeful, it was intentional, they have done this to hurt me, right? When that wasn't what was going on. People are people. We are humans. We are flawed. We all make mistakes and we do things we don't mean to. We forget to call the person on Friday that we said we would call, not because we don't want to call them, but because life happens, right? So you're going to assume the best when you trust somebody and vice versa. Going back to that accountability and reliability piece with yourself, when you didn't go up and walk every day, you're going to assume the best about yourself. You're not going to get down on yourself. You're not going to beat yourself up. You're going to say, you know what? I did not do the thing I said I was going to do. I'm going to be honest about that. And I did not do the thing I said I was going to do. But I love myself. I am worthy, I am capable of doing the thing, and next week is a new week, right? So this is just one way that you can think about trust as we move through. You can kind of think about this from this acronym perspective, and taking that small but very big word of trust, right, and breaking it down into these things will allow you to be a little bit more curious. I love this quote by Maya Angelou that's up on the screen as well. It says, "I don't trust people who don't love themselves and tell me I love you." There's an African saying, which is, "Be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt." So in other words, be careful when somebody offers you something that they themselves do not have, right? And so that's the same thing with trust. Like, if you are not in a trusting relationship with yourself, it is then going to be very difficult to enter a trusting relationship with others. So this other little blurb that's on the screen here, self-care is really the ability to trust yourself. This radical act of self-trust is knowing that you can identify your own needs and can access the resources in you and around you to help meet that need. So part of what was going on with me and my trust issues is that I wasn't putting myself first in situations where I needed to. And it was causing a lot of anxiety, because what was happening is I knew I was too tired to do the thing, right? To go out and socialize and whatever. I knew I had hit my limit. Or I knew that I probably didn't need to drink that soda because I knew it would upset my stomach, but everybody else was having a soda. And so like I didn't want to be like the one weird person that got water or whatever it was, right? I knew I should be saying no. I knew I should be holding my boundaries and putting my body's needs first, but I wasn't. And so I was ending up feeling really sick, and I was ending up feeling really anxious and overly tired and just all the bad things, right? And it was because my body was like, hey, I can't trust you to take care of me. Like, you say you're going to put me first. You say you're going to meditate every day. You say that you're going to do these things for me, but you're not doing it. So I'm going to press all the buttons that I have at my disposal. I'm going to make you tired. I'm going to make you feel sick. I'm going to give you a headache because I need you to stop and take care of yourself. So that's my own personal experience. I just wanted to share it with you all. Hopefully this is bringing up some things that will connect to your personal experience that you can think about as we're moving through this. The one last thing I'll share about trust before we dive into our first activity is that the opposite of trust is betrayal. And so when you extend trust to yourself, to others, to an institution, and one of those 7 elements is betrayed, it's a tiny betrayal. And the more of those tiny betrayals there are, the harder it is to build up some of these elements, right? And that's why trust is such a big, big theme. So thank you all for letting me share this with you. I am so excited about this theme. I don't know if I've ever been as excited about this theme as I am this one. And I'm super excited to get into our content. So our very first activity tonight is on self-trust. And it can be done on any blank page or space in your journal. I think I did mine on like somewhere woven in here, like stuck in one of these blank pages in the beginning of the book here, just on a blank piece of paper, page 7, I think. So what you're going to do is reflect on a time when you had to place trust in yourself, similar to Mayha's story on page 2 in her monthly letter about learning to ride a bike without training wheels. How did that experience make you feel? And what did it teach you about the power of self-trust? So last year, about this time, I took my very first solo trip for fun. I had done solo trip for work before, but this was my first solo trip for fun. And I was very excited because I was going to like my favorite place, which is Disney World, but I was incredibly anxious and nervous because it meant that I was going to be completely alone and I was going to need to advocate for myself. And while Disney is one of my favorite places, it is also incredibly overstimulating and it can be very overwhelming. And so that meant that I was going to have a whole 6 days where I needed to advocate for myself, put myself first, right? Like I needed something else, I gotta ask the waiter. I have to talk to the stranger. I have to do the thing. If I need help, I have to ask for it. There's nobody there to step in and do it for me. And so I went, I was sick that morning. I left, like just, normal nausea, kind of nervousness stuff. I got on the plane, my heart was pounding. I landed, I was nervous about finding the shuttle, right? All the things. The second I finally got into my hotel room, huge, huge sigh of relief. And so right there, I learned, oh, wow, just traveling makes me really anxious. That's something I didn't realize before. Once I get to the place, I feel better. Okay, mental note. Then more things like that happened as I was on the trip. I noticed that when I didn't have to ask anybody else, hey, are you cool if we do this instead? And I could just make the decision, very little anxiety. So it turns out that I had more people-pleasing tendencies than I knew or that I like to admit. And so as this trip moved forward, I figured out that it was very easy for me to put myself first when I only have to worry about myself. And this magical thing happened, y'all. I had way more energy. I met up with strangers and I made new friends. I'm getting ready to see them again in a couple weeks. They're all the way from Canada. I can't wait to see them again. I talk to strangers in line. I sit next to strangers on rides, and I can be really introverted. But I just had all of this energy because I was just putting myself first, making sure I had what I needed. And my body said, hey, girl, you got me, I got you. So, enough about me. I'm going to put on some music for you to think about this prompt, and I'll hop back and forth between these pages. I do have some things over here on the left-hand side that might jog your memory of a time if you're struggling to think of one. And then we'll come back together and move on to our next activity. All right. Thank you all for taking time to think about this and for sharing in the chat. There were some really incredible, really powerful things that you shared. And I also just really love the way you all support one another and lift each other up. It's part of what makes this just an amazing, amazing community. So we are now getting into the journals, starting on page 14 with our journal prompts. Now we're going to take these one by one. So I'm going to give you a prompt, give you some music, give you a prompt, give you some music. So our first prompt is, how do you define trust? So in your own words, how do you define trust? If one of these definitions up on the screen resonates with you, go with that. If it feels different when you think about it, go with that. I also included a snippet at the bottom from Meha's letter on page 2, because she kind of talks about, to her, trust holds this sense of safety and reliability and belief in the integrity of someone or something. For me, in my own words, trust is a firm belief based on past experience or other beliefs / a chain of trust, right? Because sometimes I feel like I trust people or things if people I trust them, if that makes sense. So that's how I defined it in my own words. So I'll put on some music for you to think about how you define trust, and then we'll move on to the next prompt. Okay, so now we are going to move down to our next prompt, which is how do you build trust in yourself versus with others? And I've got the Braving acronym back up there if you want to lean on it. And then I brought back Maya Angelou's quote there just because I love it so much. And then I also took another snippet from Mayhaw's letter. She said, we foster deeper connections with others by trusting within to share our true selves with others and trusting in others to accept us for who we are. Without compassion and honesty, trust can't exist. So what I wrote is with myself, it takes a level of consistency, grace, and sometimes a little bravery. A lot of my anxiety stems from a disconnect between what my body trusts versus my mind. And then with others, it's not entirely dissimilar, but I'm usually more forgiving of others than I am myself. So sometimes once trust is broken with me, it's broken for but other times I'll forgive and forget. But overall, it's just very trial and error. So again, I'll put on some music here for you all to think about this prompt. Share with us in the chat if you're comfortable. Okay, thank you all for sharing. If you're still working on this, that is okay. We are going to hop down to our next prompt on this same page. So write about a time when you put your trust in something or someone and it paid off. Now, the prompt we had earlier was about a time when you trusted yourself, but this says something or someone. So you can expand upon what you thought about earlier or write about a different time you trusted yourself and it worked out. Or you can think about this from the perspective of when you trusted another person, an institution, an opportunity, right? So I've got some fun quotes up on the screen for some inspiration there. But what I wrote about is my husband. We met in high school and life was messy in high school for a bazillion reasons. And we actually did not date until after high school, but neither of us came from the most stable home life. Neither of us were in the best situations. And there was just a lot of leaps of faith to take with one another. We were kids. When I moved out and we moved in together, I was not even 19 years old yet. So there were many, many, many moments of trust. But we've been married for over 10 years now. We've been together for 18 years, and he's my best friend. He's my guy. He's my partner. And I mean, that word to me is everything, to have an actual partner, to have somebody that will not just give 50-50, but 100%. And that's hard for me to accept that kind of love sometimes. And it goes back to those trust issues, right? Like, even after 18 years of being together, I'm like, why are you so nice to me? What why are you so nice to me? Why do you do things for me? Why are you willing to do all of this stuff for me when I won't do it for myself, right? So that's what I chose to write about. I'll give you all a few minutes to think about this, and then we'll move on to our next little activity. Thank you all for sharing. We are now going to flip over to page 21 to do something a little bit more lighthearted and fun. We are going to do our trust jar activity. So this is listing out people, places, and activities that instill a sense of trust. So I've got a little graphic over there in the top left corner. It's not the braving acronym, but it kind of has the same vibe of what we talked about earlier. And then there's some other fun quotes and things up on the screen. So what is in my jar? A couple things. Disney World, obviously, talked about that earlier. Now it's even more of a special place for me. My husband, Cameron, who I also talked about earlier. Being vulnerable with others and having them share in return, which you all are all wonderful to do here tonight with me. Trusting with positive results, therapy, journaling, tailgate, Sonder fam, receiving help from others. And that's actually something that Brene Brown talks about in that podcast episode, which, by the way, will be inside this playlist that I'll share at the end, is that a lot of the times receiving help from others builds trust more than giving to help to others even. New positive experiences. My home, most of the time, I have a deep-seated fear of home invasion, and I have since I was a kid, so sometimes that gets a little shaky. My hometown, just the area I'm in, which I think speaks to like familiarity, right? Like I know my way around 3 different ways and I know where all the things are and that sort of thing. Good service, like truly good service in any capacity, not just at restaurants, but on the phone, like it builds rapport, it builds good trust. Showing care. So when people show care, and what I mean by that is not just like when they care about you and do nice things for you, but like when they remember things like your pet's name or, oh yeah, so and so, that's your cousin, right? You were telling me that story about them, right? People that like pay attention and like really pay attention because they actually care about you and what you have to say. Achieving a goal, time. Sometimes trust just takes time. Being honest, clear boundaries or guidelines. My mom's best friend Bunny has this like amazing river house, and I feel super like safe and secure there. And it's just, yeah, I feel it feels like a little place I can trust, feels like a big old hug. And then my husband's grandparents, and yeah, just paying attention in general is like a really big act of kindness. So that's what's in my trust jar. Hopefully, this in combination with the screen and everything that we've talked about tonight has got some good inspiration for you to fill up that jar. I will put on some fun music and then we'll close out our time together. Thank you so much for working on your jar. And if it is more full than you expected, that's awesome. I'm glad you were able to tap into that. If it's not as full as you were expecting, that does not mean that it is a bad jar. Maybe the page is too big. Maybe you are just really in tune with what works for you, and that is okay if that is a small list. So, thank you all so much for being here this evening, allowing me to share with you all and sharing in return, building this wonderful community of trust together. I would love to see your pages in Sonder Club if you feel comfortable sharing, or at least your trust jars. Um, we are still doing our Refer a Friend program, so they get $10 off, you get $10 off, and then you come to socials together and listen to me yap on about trust and other good things. If you're able to upgrade to an annual subscription, it can save you quite a bit of money, especially with the recent monthly price increase. So just something to think about. Go ahead and make those holiday lists early and throw that on there. And then as always, please fill out the feedback survey. Make sure you're letting those folks at HQ know what you loved about tonight, what you maybe didn't like, what you'd like to see different. Malika is popping those links in the chat for us. And also in the chat will be our link to the YouTube page where this social and all of our socials, there's getting close to 800 on there now, will be later where you can view the recording. We do have these stickers going on. So we've got these cool monthly sticker sets now that are themed to the journals. So you can kind of tack them on as an added subscription if you like. I used them last month and had a lot of fun because I am not normally a sticker girly, but I might be becoming one, which is good because I did get this, which is the sticker set. So instead of being themed to each journal, it's about 2,000, sorry, not 2,000. Oh yeah, no, 2,000 sticker pieces all in one book. I did my weekly setup with those last week and again had a lot of fun. So I don't know, you guys, I might be becoming a sticker girly after all. And then this just launched last week for pre-order. It's the Elevate Planner, and it looks like it's going to have a lot of really cool journal prompts, kind of like what we did tonight. So maybe look into that. There is a 10% off early bird code there if you're interested. And then I'm going to share my playlist in the chat. I will share the link. I just got to grab it here. And again, not only is that the playlist, but in that playlist, you are going to find a link to that podcast episode with Brene Brown on trust and that braving acronym that I mentioned at the beginning of the social. So if you want to listen to it, it is there. As always, it was our extreme pleasure to be here with all of you. We are so glad that you joined us. We hope that you had an amazing time and that you are feeling ready and engaged with our new theme of trust. Until next time, be good to each other, and we'll see you all in Sonder Club.
My mother says I have Irish eyes, Irish eyes, Irish eyes. My mother says I have Irish eyes. They go ever so blue under stormy skies, but they're never so blue as when I let them cry. My father says I have English hair, English hair, English hair. Brown like the bark of an oak somewhere, like the bed of a lake where the hemlock grows, like the thorn in the stem of an English rose. I'm a map of the world and the ones before, 1 foot in sea and 1 on shore. Every step, every hope along high. I'm a map of them all with my Irish eyes. My nana says I have traveling feet, traveling feet, traveling feet. Slippers for princesses, don't